Hey guys, welcome to RESGEN's Giving Life podcast. Stories and conversations about life in Christ, everyday discipleship, and exploring ways that we as men can give life to others. My name is Tom Henderson, founder of RESGEN, and I am stoked you are joining me for today's show. Before I introduce my guest, I do want to remind you though that we release a new episode every other Thursday. So I'd encourage you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. That way the content will come right to you each time we drop a new episode. Also, it would mean a ton to me if you would just take a couple minutes after you listen to the podcast to rate and or write a quick review about it. It seriously is one of the best ways for people to find our podcast and join our community of listeners. All right, my guest today is a friend of mine named Sam Acho. Sam is an NFL player, an author, speaker, and a humanitarian. He's a two-time Walter Payton NFL Man of the Year nominee, the vice president of the NFL Players Association, and a co-host of the Home Team podcast. Sam is also the founder and president of Athletes for Justice and is a graduate of both the University of Texas and the Thunderbird School of Global Management. It's quite the list of accomplishments for a man in his early 30s. Well, on today's podcast, Sam and I talk about so much good stuff, including how he dealt with setbacks like injuries and roster changes, how his identity in Christ has helped him throughout his career, and what prompted him to write his newly released book, Let the World See You: How to Be Real in a World Full of Fakes. I hope you're ready for a great time today, friends. Here is my conversation with Sam Acho. Well, Sam Acho, my friend, it is good to have you on the Giving Life podcast.
It's good to be on with you, Tom.
Oh man, this is super fun. I love the way that we got connected. I want to start there because we got connected actually through your brother. I was conversating with your brother about some things, and he said, "Hey, have you ever met my brother Sam? Because I think Sam would be super interested in the things that you're doing in Sioux Falls with the RESGEN Men's Summit and all of that." And I said, no, but I'd love to meet him. He reached out to you and said, hey, you need to check this out. You need to check this guy out, the summit. And it was such a fun experience because I was on a walk with my wife at the time. And I got a phone call, or actually I came home, to a text message from you. And you had texted me and said, hey, I just got off the phone with my brother and he was telling me about you and I want to know what's going on in Sioux Falls and if there's ever a place for me to be a part of it and whatever. And so I called you. I said, hey, sorry for the delay in my response, but I was on a walk with my wife. And your first thing you said to me, Sam, and this just showed me who you are as a man, who you are, just your heart, was you said, hey, Tom, how long you been married? And I said, well, about 23 years at the time. You said, and you still take walks with your wife? I love that. I hope I'm taking walks. I want to learn from you because I want to be taking my walks with my wife at 23. So that just showed me your heart about how passionate you are about just life and your marriage and all that. So I'm so excited. So real quick, that's how I got introduced to you. Give our listeners just a little bit of a glimpse of you, who you are, you're married, your kids, all that kind of stuff.
Well, no, it's interesting because I think about it and I'll get to the background on me in a second, but stuff like that's important. Like you don't hear stuff like that all the time, like people loving their wives well, people loving their kids well, trying to lead well. And so when you said that, some people are like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, no, dude, keep it up. That's awesome. Like, I think that's great. So yeah, a little bit about me. So Sam Acho, I played in the NFL the last 9 years. I'm from Dallas, Texas. I went to the University of Texas, played football there, but also was a business honors and marketing major. Won the Campbell Trophy, which is the academic Heisman Trophy. So I love learning, love competing, love Jesus, and love my family. Been married for 7 years, have 3 kids, a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. And I know we'll talk about it later, but also just wrote a book that just came out not too long ago called Let the World See You: How to Be Real in a World Full of Fakes. So the last thing I probably love is this idea of like what it means to be like vulnerable, right? To be authentic, to be vulnerable, to be real. And so when Emmanuel had reached out, he said that you guys had talked and he said, man, just give him a call. So I said, text me his number. And so he gave me your number and I just gave you a call. And I think, like I said, you were on your walk. And so I think I just shot a text message and we connected and the rest as
Yeah,
they
it's
say, is
history. We got
history.
connected. Yeah, exactly. Well, and there's so much that I want to talk about, and we're gonna maximize our time today, my friend, because there is so much good stuff that I think we're gonna visit on, and then we're gonna go as deep as we can on a lot of those things. Because first of all, I want to tell you that your book is phenomenal. It's absolutely fantastic. And as Sam mentioned, it's Let the World See You, How to Be Real in a World Full of Fakes. And just even the word vulnerable that you spoke that word, and that's not a word that a lot of football players at any level talk about, is vulnerability. And so let's just go right there. Let's just go right into the book, and then we'll visit some other things later. But tell me what prompted you to write the book, because that in and of itself that's a huge undertaking. So what prompted you to write that, Sam?
Well, what prompted me to write this book was the fact that you're right. Not a lot of football players talk about vulnerability. Not a lot of men talk about vulnerability,
Yes.
But God created men with tear ducts and tear glands as well, to be able to cry and to emote. And I saw myself hiding. I saw myself not being the real me, who God created me to be. And it's easy to put on masks, and it's easy to pretend, and it's easy to act like you have it all together when you really don't.
Mm-hmm.
And me, just like many of my other friends, teammates, men, even women I know, I was carrying that weight. And it got to a point where that weight just seemed like it was too much to carry. I was sitting down with a friend saying, dude, I don't know what is going on, but this isn't me. This isn't me. And I don't know. I just don't know what to do. I felt like I was stuck in a lot of ways. And yes, I was on the field and doing my thing and just signed a, multi-year, multi-million-dollar contract and going on at that time, my 8th year in the NFL.
Okay.
And it just seemed like, wow, things are great. And to a certain extent, things were great. But internally, I was still trying to understand, okay, why do I tend to pretend? Why do I tend to pretend? And then what was that doing to me? It was almost like suffocating me a little bit, right? Like I think about like our hearts and like the things we want to, who God made us to be, and hiding that sometimes is suffocating. And for me, to answer your question, the long and short of it is that book was therapy for me. That book, as I wrote those words, I mean, many of those words were written with tears flowing from my eyes. Many of those words were typed out with emotion coming out of me. And so that's my heart on a page.
Yeah. And you can really tell that. I mean, that it is your heart on the page. And so I just want people to know, there wasn't some ghostwriter that was writing this. This was your words. This was from your heart, your well-formulated sentences, scriptures that are emblazoned on your heart. I mean, I appreciated that so much, because there's so much of God's truth in your book. And as you and I both know, it's the power of the scripture that continues to just change us and conform us into the likeness of Christ. And that's what I got out of that. So you had these feelings, you had these thoughts. What made you say, I'm going to write a book about it? Was it just because, I mean, I know you didn't have free time, right? So what said, I need to put my hands to the keyboard, my pen to the paper, and go through this process. What led you to that point?
Well, let me tell a story, share a story. So 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, I was sitting down with a friend, and a week before training camp. Training camp is the most grueling time of an NFL season. It's about 5 weeks of 2 a day, essentially practices up at 5 or 6. You don't go to sleep till 9 or 10. And it was a week before training camp. And I just signed this contract, and I was the guy and the starter and had all the things you would imagine. And I was still struggling for whatever reason. Emotionally, I would catch myself getting easily angry at people close to me, right? And anybody who knows me knows I'm a joyful, happy dude, yet I'm over here getting mad at my kids and whatever, and getting frustrated and not knowing what's going on. And so I'm sitting down with a friend a week before training camp, and I'm just sharing with him, just like, dude, I don't know what's going on, but I just don't I feel like I'm not being the husband God called me to be, the father God called me to be, the friend God called. Like, I feel like I'm not doing any of that. And as I'm sharing with him some of my struggles, I say, well, maybe I just need to get back to football. We start in a week, maybe in a week from now, when I get back to the season and to my job and to my teammates and friends, then everything will be okay. And he looked at me and he said, Sam, if that's how you feel right now, I'm concerned about what happens when football ends for you, when you retire. And as he's talking and sharing, I start to cry. As I'm sharing as well, I'm starting to cry. Like, and mind you, I'm 6'3", 260 on the football field. Like I'm a linebacker, right? I'm hitting people for a living, demolishing quarterbacks, running backs, and anyone else in the way, especially offensive linemen. Yet I start to cry. And he looks at me. This is a friend of mine who's known me since my first or second year in the NFL, known me for 7 or 8 years at the time. And he looks at me, and as I'm crying, emoting, sharing some of my feelings and doubts and fears and shame, he says, it's nice to see you, Sam. It's nice to see you. And I looked at him thinking, what do you like? I gave him this perplexed look as if I was saying, what do you mean it's nice to see me? And he said, Sam, I've known you for 7 years and I've never seen this side of you. It's good to know that you're human. And as he says this, I'm still kind of wiping the tears away, taking in what he's putting out. And I just shared with him just the struggles of the last few months. And he said, and you never know, maybe God is writing a book in your life and you may only be on chapter 2. So he says that, and I don't think anything of it. He makes that statement. I don't think too much of it. And outside of, dude, chapter 2, do you understand what I've been through? Like, what do you mean chapter 2? It's like, I feel like it's chapter, whatever. And he said, hey, maybe it might help to talk to someone. I'll talk to a counselor, talk to a therapist, and someone who can listen to you. And so I did. And he had just finished sitting down with this guy he had some family stuff going on, lost some loved ones, and doing some life plan transition stuff. And he said, yeah, sit with them. So I did. And so the very next week, the morning of the day we were supposed to report to training camp, we report to training camp that evening. That morning, I'm sitting down in a therapist's office. And he asked me a question. And I figured my dad's a counselor. My dad's a marriage counselor. He's a pastor. He's a businessman, does a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I figured I knew how to, let me get in and get out, have my session or two and peace out. But he asked me a question about halfway through. He says, Sam, I got a question for you. What do you do when you get angry? I look at him. I say, well, that's easy. I just don't get angry. He says, I'll ask you again. What do you do when you get angry? And I respond again, I just don't get angry. He looks at me again. He says, Sam, everyone gets angry. So what do you do when you get angry? And as he says it for the third time, tears begin to fall down my face, from my eyes, and onto the floor. He looks at me. He puts his hand on my shoulder and he says, he leans in and says, Sam, it's nice to see you.
Come on.
And oh, by the way, get used to hearing that. And so there's a series of things that when you get the book, when you're listening and get the book, you'll see and you'll read about what happens. But fast forward, I don't know, 8-10 months, and so much had happened from in football, losing my starting spot, tearing my pec. So being out, tearing my pectoral muscle, season ending injury, being out for the season. My house that I was living in had flooded. My wife, we had our third child and she had some complications. I didn't know. I was scared that she wasn't going to make it, put it that way. Got released from the team after the injury, never been released before. Supposed to take a 5-year anniversary trip with my wife to South Korea. I was speaking at the George Mason University South Korea campus, so the business school there, and doing a football camp. And I was going to do an anniversary trip with my wife. Her wallet gets stolen, which has her not only her ID but also her U.S. citizenship card. She's from Nigeria, and so we're in the process of filing for citizenship. So she can't go in so much. She says, you got to go. You committed, you go. You said yes, so go. So I went, I do the camp. I speak to the business school. My friend who lives out there had actually set up this whole nice thing for my wife and I, not knowing if she was going to be able to make it or not. And so she says, Sam, I have all this available if you want to do it, or I don't know. I mean, it's available. I said, I'd see the rest. I just sit down and rest. And so I just went to sleep, and God woke me up. God woke me up in the middle of the night, and I just started writing. I was at I think the Intercontinental, some hotel. I don't remember what hotel it was, but got the pen and the pad and just started writing. And I was writing about fear and about shame and about doubt and about love and about death and all these things. I started writing and writing and writing. And I got back from the trip. I called my friend. I said, hey, dude, remember that book you were talking about? He said, yeah. I said, remember how you said I was on chapter 2? He said, yeah. I said, I think I'm on chapter 12 right now. Let me know if you know a good publisher or a good book agent, because I'm ready to start this process.
Wow.
So that's how the book came about.
Wow. Man, to think about the journey of sitting and hearing that from him, and then going through that season of just one hit after another. And that's what it sounded like it was, like just this one hit of, man, another one. Are you kidding me, God? I know that a lot of people looked at 2020 that way, like, oh my gosh, yeah, well, blame it on 2020. And that was this, and what you described was just this rough season. But out of that season, all of a sudden, God gave you these words, and then you began to process differently. You said that it was therapeutic for you as you wrote it. So what did the process of writing the book really teach you about yourself as you were doing that? What about you as a man, a follower of Jesus, a husband, a dad? Because we all have different hats that we wear, different kind of, we try to be consistent in who we are, but at the same time, there's different roles we play in different situations. And so what did this process teach you about each of those roles and just you as a person, Sam?
It taught me that I'm a writer. It taught me that I'm a writer, and I'd been repressing that trait of me for a really, really long time. It's funny, over the holidays, I got a chance to see some family and go back to the house that I grew up in. And I got a chance to look through some of my old stuff from grade school. And I'm talking about like 7th grade, 8th grade, freshman year. I was writing like paragraphs and essays and like beautifully written stuff. And for whatever reason, that side of me had just been repressed. And so when I started this process of writing, it was almost as if I was opening up Pandora's box and opening up a side of me and sharing that side of me with the world that not only people hadn't seen in a long, long time, but a side of me that I hadn't seen in a long, long time. Yes, there's the side of the NFL linebacker and the 9-year vet and the team leader and all these things that, vice president of the executive committee of the Players Association. But there's also this side who wants to listen and learn and love and speak truth and stand for justice and not back down and to be who God made me to be.
Yeah. And
so writing that book showed me that I'd been selling myself short in not just one area of my life, but in so many areas of my life. And not only me, it showed me that a lot of us do, maybe not all, but a large majority of us, we do, for whatever reason, we sell ourselves short. We play small. We don't live up to our full potential. And God is asking us, he's calling us, he's pleading with us to not only to let the world see us, but almost to allow him to see us. And imagine letting God see me. Like, what does that even mean? But go back to the Garden of Eden. Adam hid. Adam was hiding and God was walking through the garden. And what did he say? Adam, where are you? Of course, God knew. But God wanted to allow Adam the opportunity to come out. God, this is me. This is where I'm at. This is what I've done. Do you still love me? The answer is always a resounding yes. But a lot of us don't believe that will be the answer. And that is why we hide. It's this desire to be loved. Not only to be loved, before that, you have to be known. And not only to be known, before you're known, you have to be seen. And so anybody who reads this book or gets their hands on this book, you listen to it or get it on Amazon or wherever you want to get your books from, you'll understand what it's like to be seen and to be known and to be loved. Not only by others or whatever, but by God.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And so you go through that. How did, I want to talk specifically about on the marriage end, because I think that's men, we want to be seen as the provider. We want to be seen as the strong one all the time, that we've got it all figured out and we've got the plans and all that. How did this process strengthen your marriage?
The process of writing, or what process?
Just the process of really allowing yourself to be seen, Oh,
absolutely.
And just allowing God to see you in full transparency, because you're right. There is times that we act like, well, we hide certain aspects of our lives, and that brings upon shame, like you spoke about, even, Adam and Eve. But when we allow ourselves, that allows us to be so much more healthy, not just in our relationship with God, but in our relationships with others. And so how did that impact your marriage?
Words can't begin to describe what letting my guard down, really in front of my wife, did for our marriage. And not only our marriage, but just for me as an individual. There's a song, but before I even get to that, there's a chapter in my book called Blessing. And it's chapter 12, and blessing is the English translation for my wife's name. Her name is Ngozi, and Ngozi is an Igbo word, but in Igbo, if you translate that word from Igbo to English, it means blessing. And I didn't realize how much of a blessing my wife was to me, because I wasn't allowing her to see the full me. Because the thing is, if people only see a little part of you and love that little part, that's one thing. But if people see all of you, your fears, your failures, your disappointments, but also your good, and if they see all of you and they still love you, that's a whole nother thing. It's one thing. Hey, look at the great part of me, right? The football jersey and the and the $1 million smile and the podcast and it's like, and you love that. Oh, great. But what happens at my lowest points? Mm-hmm. Showing people my lowest points, the insecurities, the fears, the mistakes. A lot, even as I say it, there's this fear of, will I be accepted and loved? And the answer is a resounding yes. God gave me a woman who reminded me of that. But also, God gave me a son who reminded me of that. And so as I was going on this journey, really it was Jesus who was with me, the Spirit of God saying, son, I love you. I am for you. I see the best in you. There's that song by Marvin Sapp. He saw the best in me when everyone else around could only see the worst in me. It says he saw the best in me when everyone else around could only see the worst in me. It goes on to say that he's mine, I'm his. It doesn't matter what I did. He only sees me for who I am. And that's the God that we serve. A God who sees the best. Even on our worst days, he sees the best. And so that understanding had a tremendous impact on my marriage.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for sharing that, Sam. The people that have influenced your life the most, as you think about, just your life, from childhood on, and I know that you tell some stories in the book of important individuals and all of that. Were there certain players that, you talked about the one already that sat alongside you and said, hey, nice to see you, and God's writing the book and all that. But are there certain players that God brought into your life that were people that really journeyed with you as you were striving to be a disciple and follower of Jesus in the tough world that you were in and I don't want to say the superficial world, but in a lot of ways it can be. It can be all about performance, or it can all be about stats, or it can be all about just flash. But did God bring some people around you at key moments that really helped you keep your eyes focused on Christ and get you to the point of where you could be seen?
Yes, and it wasn't just players. Because I think sometimes people might hear that and think, well, NFL. No, it wasn't just play. It was just people in my life. And so like I had just a friend of mine who I'd known for years. We met at church one day. We actually met at a Lecrae concert. Funny enough, we met at a Lecrae concert backstage. Just a friend. Became a friend. Another one was a basketball coach who we met at church. He's a basketball coach now at Purdue University Northwest. Became a friend. Another guy is a pastor friend of mine from the church I went to when I was in Chicago. So those were friends God put in my life at a specific time for a specific season and reason. And yes, God also put teammates in my life as well. I remember my my rookie year in the NFL. I remember just being a little bit nervous because I didn't know if anybody else was a follower of Jesus or not.
Yeah.
And I was trepidatious more than anything. Just, I didn't know what it was going to be like. And there's a friend of mine, I was at this award ceremony. I won this award called the Warfel Trophy in college. And one of the former winners' name was Rudy. I asked him, I said, hey man, because he played in the NFL for 5-6 years. I said, hey, what is it like as a Christian in the NFL? He says, don't worry, Sam. God puts at least 2 to 3 guys on every single team who are followers of Jesus. You just got to find them. At least 2 to 3, right? Could be more, but at least. And so when I got to my team the first couple of weeks, I'm sitting there like, dude, what is going on? I don't see anybody who's a follower of Jesus. I don't even know what they're doing. And I remember just praying, God, give me somebody, give me some kind of hope or something, God, because I don't know what to do. And it's one of those prayers where you're just throwing it out, throwing it up. Hopefully God, hears you and catches it. And I remember getting the hot tub after practice that day, maybe the next day. I prayed the night, so it was the next day. And I'm sitting there by myself, and there was one of the older players, a wide receiver named Chancey Stuckey, who now is a coach at Clemson. He's an assistant coach at Clemson, maybe a graduate assistant or something. And he has his Bible open. And I think it might have been on his phone, so the Bible app, and he was listening to it or something. Somehow I knew it was the Bible. And I'm like, interesting, right? And so like, even as something as minuscule and as seemingly small as that, God's like, I got you. Just for that moment, just to get you through. And then God brought other people in my life, a backup quarterback named Rich, who we would do Bible studies together. We would actually lead the team in Bible studies. God brought other people, friends, right? So the answer is yes. And it wasn't just, it's like, oh, NFL. No, it's like just a human being. You know what I mean? Like God put these people in my life.
Yeah. And what I like about that, Sam, is that you were very proactive in really seeking that out as well. Like you were asking those questions ahead of time, being proactive and saying, I want to make sure that I'm surrounding myself just with people that can be an encouragement to me and let me know that I am not alone. Like, that God gave you that sign of, hey, I got you. You're not alone. I've got other people that you guys can be encouragers together, and you can be, just who you are and not be ashamed of that. And I love that. All right. So bro, we've already touched on a bunch of different stuff, and we're going to probably have to do a part 2 sometime in the future, just because there's so many things that I want to visit with you about, but I've heard you say, and I wanted to have you unpack this a little bit more. I'm going to shift gears just a little bit. And I've heard you say in a couple of different interviews is you've said the statement that money is a magnifier. And I thought that's such an interesting statement. What do you mean by that?
In that same conversation that I had with that friend Rudy, who told me, hey, there's Christians on every team, I also had another question for him. I said, because people have been coming up to me and they said, Sam, you're such a great guy, and and you follow God, and don't let the NFL change you. Don't let this fame and all these things change you. As I was getting ready to go, hopefully get drafted. And they would say these things. I say, yeah, okay, I'm not going to let it change you. But I was like, I don't know if it's going to change. How do I know if it's going to change?
Yeah.
I don't know what these things do. And Rudy looks at me, asked him, I said, does it change you? Like, I don't know how this works. He says, all that money is, or fame or success, all those things are, it's just a magnifying glass. It just put it this way. It magnifies what you're doing before. And so if you were a giver before you had a lot of money, well, now that whenever you get more money, you'll just give more. If you were very, throwing parties, bring people together, you'll just bring more people together. But on the flip side, if there's some dirt you were doing behind closed doors, well, that will be magnified as well. You have more resources, right? The Bible talks about it, faithful with little, faithful with much. And it doesn't say this in the Bible, but if you're unfaithful with little, you're probably going to be unfaithful with much. And so that's what I mean. All that people say, okay, I just want to get, whether it's money or fame, or maybe when I get married, things will be good. It's like me when I was saying, maybe I just got to get to the football season and back to normalcy and things will be great. That's not how this thing works, right? 2020 didn't teach us, okay, we got to get back to normal. 2020 taught us, no, we need to change, right? We need to put our hope and faith in God, not in politics, not in presidents, not in sports and sports teams, not in job security, whatever people put their faith in. We need to put our faith in God on a daily basis, not okay, well, maybe next week I'll go to church or I'll pray or it's like, no, God, I need you today.
Yeah.
I need you today. And so that's what I mean when I say that money is a magnifier of fame or success. It just exposes and brings to the light who you really are.
That's good. That's good. One of the things also that I just wanted to visit with you real quick is just on the, one of the things that you've always done in whatever city you've lived in, whatever team you've played for, and it's just because, again, it's who you are. It's your heart, is just really using the platform God has given you to help others, to, seek out those that need help, stand for justice, and using that platform in a very positive and public way so that that could be an encouragement and a model for other people. And your family is connected. I know that your dad, you already mentioned your dad, and he has a ministry in Nigeria, correct? And so missions and helping people, serving the poor and the lost, standing up for justice, that's been a part of your upbringing, correct? And so, how has that just, transferred or translated from your time as a child doing that to now being a man and like leading your family in that? How have you been successful in continuing to make that a part of your life? Because I really do think I've seen like the great work that was just done in Chicago, just recently. And God is using it in powerful ways. And so I just think I was greatly encouraged by that. And so just unpack that a little bit for us today, just because I know that there's a lot of people that really would love to be a part of more of those kinds of things, but maybe not knowing how to or whatever.
Jeremiah 29:11, people know the verse. I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans for you to prosper, not to harm you, give you a future and a hope. We all recite that verse. We all know that verse. Anybody, it's like, Christian 101. Well, a few verses before, I think it's verse 7 and 8, maybe it might have been 4, 5, and 6. God is speaking through Jeremiah to the exiles, right? That verse is spoken to people who were like exiled, like taken from their land, and they were foreigners in a different land. Refugees is probably the best term we could use right now. And God tells them, these refugees, these foreigners, these exiles, yes, he tells them, I know the plans I have. And that's one thing. And that's the whole thing that I'll let that sit for a second, who that verse was told to and when it was told to them. But also a few verses before, God tells them, I want you to seek the welfare of the community that you're in. Yes, I know you're in exile. Yes, I know you're somewhere where you don't know if this is your final destination. You don't feel like you're comfortable or at home. Either way, I want you to seek their welfare. I want you to do what benefits them, because when they benefit, you will benefit. And so to your question of why it's not even a why question, maybe how, who, what, when, why. I don't know. I don't know which one it is, but like to the question of the stuff that you do, Sam, why do you do it? Or how did it start? Yes, I saw my parents do it, right? My parents go to Nigeria every summer and do medical mission trips. They've been doing it for the last 30 years. So I saw that, number one, but also it's like it's in my blood. Number two, then if you look at scripture, it's there as well, right? Seek the wealth. It's easy to say, oh, well, I don't know where to start or what to do. Just start somewhere, figure it out, look up somewhere online. Yeah, I mean, like seek the welfare of the community you're in. Don't just turn a blind eye to it and say, well, that's meant for someone else to do. No, God put us in these places for a reason. If you're in South Dakota, start there, but don't stop there. Go to the ends of the earth. And so it's easy. It's easy just to sit on your hands and say, well, there's nothing I can really do. It's a whole nother thing to actually seek the welfare of people who don't look like you, who don't think like you, who weren't raised the way you were raised, and to get to know them. Like that's a whole different thing. That's what Jesus asked us to do.
Man, that is good. Okay, I got time for probably one more question, and then I want to give you a little bit of a platform to just kind of give us a final word of encouragement. And like I said, we'll do part two in the future, something because I got some other stuff. This has been awesome, brother. But okay, so a lot of our identity as men it's drawn from what we do, right? I mean, we've discussed that a little bit. It's easy just to say that our identity is tied to our work, or to our performance, to our paycheck, whatever. So you have had some transitions in your life, obviously going from, from one team to another team, had different roles on, Players Association, you're doing so many different things with communities. But now God seems to be moving you in a new season. So my question for you is, through each of those changes, and as you are now moving into a new season that might leave the NFL playing behind and fully embracing what God is providing ahead, have you had any identity crisis moments? How has your identity in Christ helped you through that?
Yeah, a year ago, not even a year ago, I was sitting in this time it wasn't a counselor, but it was a guy who was doing a life plan. Some people may be familiar with them. It's pretty much through an identity crisis, like, give me some direction. Yeah. And I was sitting in this guy's office and he asked me a question. He said, Sam, because I've been sharing stories about all the things and this and that and what I want to do and what I haven't done and my dreams and hopes. And he said, Sam, how much of your life have you spent doing what someone else wants you to do versus what you want to do? Like, how much else wants you to do? And mind you, we've been together for about a couple hours, of the first day. We're probably at like hour 8 or so of the time spent. So we kind of got to know me a good bit. And I said, honestly, dude, about 95% has been what someone else wants me to do. Maybe 5% has been what I want to do. He looks at me, nodded his head. He said, that's what I figured. Just FYI, Sam, if you keep it up, if you keep on that path, you're going to end up curled up in a ball somewhere, maybe on my couch or on someone else's. He didn't say that as a chastisement, too much service. No, we said that because God gave each and every one of us unique gifts, desires, and talents, and he wants those to share. He wants us to share those with the world, as opposed to trying to fit in and do what other people want us to do. And I say that to say, you talk about this identity crisis. As I mentioned a year ago, and mind you, I was still playing. I had just signed with the Tampa Bay. Like I just finished my 9th season. I was still kind of like, hey, maybe I'll play, maybe I won't, kind of thing. And I was going through an identity crisis because God had started changing some of the desires of my heart, even while I was playing. In my 8th year, while I was playing, the desires started to change. And I was like, what is going on? I'm the guy who's usually first one to practice and doing all the drills. And now I'm like, dude, I want to go hang out with my wife and my kids. And I mentioned earlier, we had some there were some complications. So it was during that time where I'm like, dude, what is really most important? And so that was then. And even now, we're recording this podcast early 2021. And even now I'm saying, okay, God, what's next?
Mm-hmm.
What's next? I didn't play this season, which a lot of me didn't want to. I've been doing some stuff on TV, which has been a blast, and doing some college football analyst and NFL analyst and Chicago Bears stuff. And that's been fun, but the season's coming to a close next.
Mm-hmm.
And so my wife and I are just trying to seek God's face.
Yeah.
Trying to seek God's face, seek his will for our lives. I believe it's Proverbs 25:12. It talks about God, he says, like, fear me and I'll let you know. I'll make known my will to those who fear me, right? The secret counsel of the Lord is for those who fear him. To them, he makes known the way he should choose. That's the verse.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, all right, God, give me that secret counsel. Like, I want to fear you. I'm at right now. To answer your question of this identity crisis, what do you do during an identity crisis? The answer, if that was like a problem, like some kind of equation in math, right? The solution, right? Okay, the secret counsel of the Lord is for those who fear him. To them, he will make known the way that they should choose. So if you take all those words, if you want to figure out the way you should choose or God's secret counsel, the solution is fearing God. Is to fear God, is to be obedient, right? Is to spend time in the word of God, spend time in prayer, spend time, not necessarily just seeking God's will. God, what do you want me to do? No, fear me. He says, fear me, and then I'll show you the way. I'll make it apparent. I'll do far beyond you. I'll do more than you could ever dream of or imagine, but I need you to fear me, to obey me. And it's not, I was talking to somebody yesterday, okay, yeah, be scared of God. And no, it's not be scared of God. Mm-hmm. It's fear God. It's to put him in reverential fear, like a respect,
yes,
like you'd have for like a father figure, right? Or maybe a coach. Like this respect.
Yes. Oh, that's good. That's good to put your full trust and revere God for who he is and who he's created you to be. That is so good, Sam. All right. Well, our time is up, brother. I know that you got to roll into something different, but just give me, we just do something at the end of the podcast every time we gather, and it's just called the final word. So is there a final word of encouragement that you want to give the guys, the listeners right now, to send them off with before we tell them how they can connect with you?
My final word would be, don't let what happened in 2020 determine your 2021 and beyond. What I mean by that is 2020 handcuffed a lot of people. They couldn't go where they wanted to go or do what they wanted to do. I'm trying to move my body, but I got a mic right in front of me.
Yeah.
The audio to be good for everybody listening. I care about y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let what happened in 2020 hamstring you and your dreams for 2021. God can still and will still use you. He uses struggle to produce growth. Joseph was thrown into a pit for sharing his dreams, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery. But God, he became the second in command, saved a myriad of people in the midst of. And then also got thrown into jail, by the way, FYI, not to be forgotten. So suffice it to say, all the heroes you hear about, not only in the Bible, but also in life, they've been through some stuff. So don't think that life is over because 2020, no, like this could be your beginning.
Yeah, that's good. Well, Sam, I greatly appreciate your time, my friend, and such good truth that you spoke into my heart today and into my life today, into our listeners as well. So thank you for that. How do people connect with you, follow you? Give them those kind of details.
If you want to connect, first of all, thank you all so much for listening. Tom, thanks for having me. If you want to connect, I'm on social media at the Sam Acho, TheSamAcho on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. All the, so I'm available there. And also, if you want to find out more about, another easy way to connect is just read the book.
Yeah.
Straight up. Like that's me. You want to know, like people who've read that book know more about me.
Totally.
Than a lot of people. Even some of my closest friends have read it and said, dude, I didn't know this or I didn't know that. And so, yeah, so go to Go to Amazon, go to Target. It's go to order the book, order the audio book. It's called Let the World See You, How to Be Real in a World Full of Fakes. And then let me know what you think. Connect with me and let me know what you think about it.
Yeah. And it's so good. Again, man, you did such a great job. And thanks for sharing your heart through that, through this podcast. And I know that God's got and I'm going to join you in that prayer, praying that God will continue to light the path ahead for you and your wife and your kids. And I know he's got some great things in store. And I'm so pumped that we're going to be able to do some ministry together in early 2022 with you coming to Sioux Falls and be a part of the Men's Summit, the RESGEN Men's Summit. And so guys are already getting that locked into their calendar. And obviously we were hoping that it was going to be this year, but due to COVID and all of that, we had to postpone your coming till 2022. But I'm so appreciative of our friendship. And I'm just excited to watch how God uses you through this year. And I can't wait for us to share the stage together in early 22, my friend.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tom.
All right, Sam. Bless you, brother.
All right. Bless you.
Bye. Thanks for listening in on my conversation with Sam Acho today on the Giving Life podcast. For more info on Sam, be sure to follow him, The Sam Acho, on all the usual social media platforms. Check out his Home Team podcast, and of course, pick up his book, Let the World See You. Sam will also be one of our speakers at next year's RESGEN Men's Summit on January 29th, 2022, so be sure to get the event on your calendar now and make plans to join us. If you've thought of others who would find our conversation life-giving or helpful today as you were listening, be sure to forward it on to them and encourage them to listen in or watch as well. All right, that's all for us today here at RESGEN's Giving Life podcast. Until next time, continue striving to be men whose life in Christ gives life to others.